Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name is Sean Waskrug and I'm here to review all the latest movies in theaters as well as any you recommend, whether they be recent movies or old school films. Today we are going to be reviewing the latest in the DC Universe, Aquaman. Before we get into the review, don't forget to hit that like, share if you think this review is worth sharing, and hit that subscribe button. And go ahead and head on over to Facebook and see Sean's Movie Crusades on there. And give that a follow so that way you guys stay up to date with all the latest reviews and other videos that we put on the channel. So today we are reviewing Aquaman. DC movies lately have been kind of hit or miss for the most part. I mean, taking the Batman films out of the equation. If we're going with the DC universe or DCEU, or the world of DC is what they're trying to call themselves now. Basically, it started with Man of Steel. I thought Man of Steel was a solid film, and I actually quite enjoy it. It's very divisive with a lot of people. A lot of people didn't like how Superman killed Zod at the end of the film, or the world, or the whole city being destroyed. I didn't quite mind that part. I actually thought Henry Cavill... Cavill. It's Cavill. I liked his performance as Superman. It's just that Superman is usually very bright and happy, and this Superman was more dark and moody, and that kind of ended up being the way with a lot of the films. I mean, we ended up getting BVS, Batman vs. Superman. That movie was utter trash. The extended cut was okay, but the movie was just a huge pile of crap. There was a good movie in there, but you had to go through all this crap to find it. Suicide Squad was also another horrible film. And then we finally got Wonder Woman. And Wonder Woman was very, very well received. I quite enjoyed it. There's one thing in Wonder Woman that still pisses me off to this day that I won't get into, which kind of made me feel a little negative towards the film to a point. But overall, it was still a very good film by Gal Gadot. And then we had the Justice League movie, which was fine. It wasn't, for their attempt to have their Avengers film, it definitely did not reach that caliber. But it was fine for what it was. I didn't hate it. It just was passable. So with Aquaman coming out, we got to see Aquaman for the first time in Justice League. I was kind of yes or no with Jason Momoa's performance of it in Justice League. I felt that the character was too cool, too surfer boy for my liking. But by the end of the film, I just kind of learned to accept it, that this is the Aquaman that we're going to get. So when this Aquaman movie came out, I was pretty much already used to it, or in the mindset of that's the Aquaman we're going to have. Because, I mean, basically the Aquaman character has always been kind of the dorky superhero for the DC and always is the butt of everyone's jokes. So obviously they wanted to make it a cool Aquaman. And, I mean, I think they went too far with the surfer aspect of it. I mean, he doesn't surf, but I mean, you know what I mean. He's just way too radical, just way too laid back kind of a character. But that's the way Jason Momoa is playing it, and he plays it well. So going into this movie, the first trailers, they looked really good. Atlantis looked awesome. Amber Heard, I've never really been a big fan of her, but she looked solid in the trailers. Patrick Wilson looked like Eminem. He still looks like Eminem in the movie. But I mean, the cast looked solid. You had Willem Dafoe, Nicole Kidman. I never say his name right, but Themira Morrison, he played Jango Fett in the original Star Wars, or the prequel Star Wars trilogy. Everything looked really cool. And then, of course, the big battle sequence in the ocean. I mean, there's people riding sharks. How could I not love that? Everyone knows how much I love sharks. But yeah, it looked good. And so I was actually kind of excited coming into this because like I said, I've accepted Jason Momoa as Aquaman, and with the cast and just the visuals, it looked like it was going to be a lot of fun. Plus, director, they got one of my favorite horror directors with James Wan. James Wan, he directed The Conjuring 1 and 2, and he's a fantastic director. So knowing that they went out on a limb with a director like James Wan, I actually had a lot more confidence in the film overall. So basically, the story of this is kind of it's like I call it a backwards origin story. The reason why I call it a backwards origin story is that this isn't the first time we've seen Aquaman. You know, we saw him in obviously Justice League, so we already knew the character, but this is still going through kind of the motions of explaining who he is, how he came to be, but like the beginning part, and then we kind of skip over the whole middle, and then we get to the actual main story, kind of like what they did with Spider-Man in the MCU. But basically, the main general plot in this film is that you see how Aquaman's mother, Queen Atlanta, played by Nicole Kidman, or Atlantia, or Atlanta. It's Atlanta without the T at the end. But basically, she meets Aquaman's father, Tamarian Morrison, whose name is Tom Curry. She basically is hurt, and he's a lighthouse keeper, and he finds her on the rocks, and they fall in love, and Arthur Curry is born. And then in the process of that, obviously, this is something that is not okay for the Atlanteans. You're not supposed to mingle with humans, let alone have their queen, mate with a human and then have a child. So, in the process, Nicole Kidman has to go back to Atlantis, and basically she's never seen from again. And so then we go through there is an Atlantean that shows up to kind of train Arthur through his young adolescent and teenage years, and that is played by William Dafoe, and he's a Vulko. And basically he trains Aquaman to the man that he is today. And basically what's going on in Atlantis is that the current king King Orm, played by Patrick Wilson, he's basically getting the rest of the ocean kingdoms together to basically rise up and overtake the land, basically the rest of Earth, because his motivation, which is actually rather true, is that he's tired of the land people polluting the oceans and throwing their trash and poisoning the Atlantis children with their toxic waste and all that stuff. And they have the technology, kind of like Wakanda in a sense, to overthrow the land and basically become the rightful rulers of Earth. And so in this process, Mira, played by Amber Heard, she comes up to the surface and she basically tells Arthur, hey, we need your help, which Arthur wants none of that. He just wants to kind of live his life up above and wants nothing to do with Atlantis because Atlantis took his mother. And so basically Mera kind of has to force his hand, saying, this is going to come whether you like it or not. You're the only one that can overthrow King Orm because you're the rightful king, and if you're king, then the war won't happen, and yada yada yada. And that's kind of where the story goes. In the process of that, there's one scene that opens the movie where Aquaman helps a bunch of submarine guys and stops a bunch of pirates. And in the process, the leaders, it's like a father-son duo, by Jesse and where's his name? Manta. Basically, they are the leaders, and Aquaman stops them, and then in the process, Manta now has a revenge feud with Aquaman and will stop at nothing to kill him. So not only does Aquaman have to deal with the ocean situation, he also has to deal with Manta trying to hunt him down and kill him as well. So that's generally the overall plot of the film, is basically Aquaman rising to become king of Atlantis while trying to stop a war on land and in the sea, and then also having to deal with Manta as well. Performance-wise, Jason Momoa, if you saw him in Justice League, he's doing the exact same performance here. He does get some more scenes in this to actually have some dramatic approaches into it, but Jason Momoa is not a dramatic actor by any means. So there are certain scenes with certain characters that you can tell the acting level is not equal, because you can see that one person in particular is acting very, very well, and Momoa's just not giving them anything to really go off of. But he's having fun, and that's the other potential problem in the movie is he seems to be the only person that's just having a ball. Everyone else is playing this movie 100% serious the whole way through, and Momoa is basically playing the surfer cool guy, Aquaman, the entire time. And while that is fun, it also feels uneven at the same time because you have everyone else who's just stone-faced serious 100% time, and then you have him going, woo! And having a ball the entire time, and no one else is just joining him for the fun. But like I said, he's enjoyable. He makes the movie fun. Without Jason Momoa's character, the movie would be rather, ho-hum and dull and not nearly as fun. Amber Heard, she does a great job as Mira. I mean, she's basically, if Aquaman is the fun, cool one, she's definitely the wet blanket. She does have her moments to shine, and she is the good sidekick to Aquaman in the movie. They do try to force a romantic relationship between the two, but Amber Heard and Jason Momoa have zero chemistry in this movie, so it feels very forced. By the end of the movie, you just kind of accept it, not because you feel their love for each other grow. It's just that you know that it's just going to happen, so just accept it in general. But you don't feel that fire or that passion between them. But in their own rights, as a duo of throughout the movie, they're really good. It's just that the relationship aspect of it is just not there. One of the standouts or best performances goes to Nicole Kidman as Atlanta. She is fantastic in her role. She is a highlight of the movie whenever she's on screen. She's the best parts of the movie, personally, when it comes to acting. The love that she feels for Tom and Arthur is very, very strong. You see her heartbreak when she has to go back to Atlantis. And she's got one particular fight scene in the beginning of the film that was easily a highlight of the film. And she does a great job. Thermua Morrison, I know I keep saying his name wrong. He's good in his small role as Tom Curry, as the father. I wish he would have had more to do in the movie, but obviously this movie's about Aquaman and not Aquaman's father, but he does a really good job. William Dafoe is pretty good as well. He's kind of the mentor and the right-hand man to King Orm. And I personally love William Dafoe. I mean, I rarely see him in anything where I don't like him in it. So I quite enjoyed all of his scenes, and I wish there was more of him. But obviously, for his character, the main story is about Mira, Arthur, and King Orm, and he's basically the next piece. But he doesn't get enough screen time. But he's great in the roles that he's got. Patrick Wilson, he's solid, but there is some times where he overhams it up as the villain. To the point where it's very cheesy. The movie itself is very cheesy, and it's either you have to accept the cheesiness of the film or you don't accept it. And that's kind of the underlying whether you'll like the movie or whether you won't like the movie is whether or not you can accept the cheesy lines and kind of not so great dialogue in certain points. And Patrick Wilson is usually given the bulk of these lines, and you just kind of have to accept it or not accept it. There are certain scenes, though, character scenes, where two actors, when there's no action actually going on, and it's just straight one-on-one between two characters, where it's actually quite good. There's one scene with Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson, that is very well done, among others that I can't fully say because of spoilers. So when there wasn't action actually going on, and they were actually letting the actors have some actual one-on-one dialogue with each other, there was some really good acting in there. The other standout, Yahya Abdul Mateen II, he plays Manta. He's good in the role he's got. He's also not given enough in the movie, but he's good in the small role that he has. Dolph Lundgren, it has a surprise. I did not know he was in this movie, so when he popped up, I was like, Dolph Lundgren, he's great. I love anytime Dolph Lundgren was on screen, I was happy. He basically plays King Nereus. He plays basically Mira's father in the movie. And anytime Dolph Lundgren on screen, it was a highlight. So Dolph Lundgren was a great one. That's pretty much it for noticeable people to really bring up. But what worked? What worked for Aquaman? What made Aquaman work as a whole? Atlantis looks amazing. The visuals for Atlantis, it's a whole different world, and James Wan does a fantastic job at bringing Atlantis to life. It's a little too neon for my liking, but it is in the ocean, and you got to be able to see what you're doing, so neon helps. But the way that world works, I would have loved to have seen more of it, but this movie is already pushing almost 2.5 hours, so they could only show so much. But Atlantis looks gorgeous, and everything inside of it, I just kind of wanted to pause it and just kind of look and see everything, because this movie moves really fast. For it being 2.5 hours, this movie moves at breakneck speed, and there's just not enough time to kind of just stop and see everything, because it moves so quickly. I wish I would have gotten more time to just kind of see Atlantis as a whole, but what we do get to see of it, it looks great. There's also a lot of fun action sequences. The battle between Aquaman and Black Mantis in Italy is a standout action scene. It does kind of feel out of place with the movie, but it's a fun scene. Both battle scenes with King Orn are very fun. And then there's this huge battle scene at the end of the film that we see in the trailers where all the sea creatures are all fighting each other. And while it's very, very fun and cool to look at, it's also incredibly messy. And it's very hard to see what's happening in the fight. But you're seeing guys riding sharks and other guys riding like these giant alligators and crabs and fighting and stuff. And visually, it looks amazing. There's just way too much going on for you to visually understand everything that's happening on screen. But it looks insane. Tom Curry and Atlanta's love story is the strongest part of the story from the beginning all the way through. It is what keeps this movie going. Even though it is Aquaman's movie, everything that is going through the film is through the force of Tom Curry and Atlanta's love. And without that, the movie kind of falls apart. And so that is a huge highlight in the film. Like I said, Nicole Kidman is easily the best part of this movie. And that love story is the reason why Aquaman works as a whole. And that's, like I said, all the other performances that I mentioned earlier, like Dolph Lundgren, Amber Heard, William Dafoe, Yahya, I don't know. It's fun that his name's Yahya, but the guy who plays Manta, or Black Manta, they all, like I said, they're all good at their performances, and like I said, Momoa is having a blast. And if you can have a blast watching Momoa having a blast, then you should have a good time overall. What didn't work with Atlanta or with Aquaman, and there's a lot. First off, this movie really should have been broken up into 2 separate films. There's just way too much information, or when I say information, there's way too much plot. You have the sea battles that are going on. You have the Black Manta storyline. You have Aquaman trying to become king. You have this love story between him and Mira. There's just so much going on that really it should have been 2 separate movies. Black Manta should have been saved for the sequel because I felt like his character got short-sighted and undersold throughout the entire film. And he is a serious villain in the Aquaman franchise. And to basically underutilize him was a huge mistake. And I felt like they could have had breadcrumbs or still done the opening sequence with Black Manta and the submarine with Aquaman, but then that would have been the end of that, and then we would have had the after credit scene of establishing Black Manta as a villain for future films, and then this movie could have just been about Arthur basically accepting his fate to going back to Atlantis and going to become king. If they just would have stuck to that formula and didn't add all these extra things into it, I felt like the movie would have went a lot more smoother, especially for a lot of people, because a lot of people, this is, besides Justice League and the small part he's got in it, this is the first time a lot of people are noticing Aquaman. It's not like the MCU or X-Men or Batman, where a lot of people know the story of Aquaman. And because they don't. A lot of people don't know Mira or any of these other Atlanteans. So there are certain things that happen in the film, like their abilities. Like Mira has the ability, it's called hydropathia or hydrotelekinesis, something like that. She has the ability to transform and mutate water into any form she wants. There's a really, really cool scene that she does with a ton of bottles of wine. That's all I'm going to say about that, but it's an awesome scene. But it's like she's got this scene. Arthur can talk to fish, but not all the Atlanteans can do that. So it's like, what separates them from being able to do that? Just like Arthur, Mira, King Orn, Volko, they can breathe out of the water. Like, they can go on land and be totally fine. But the rest of the Atlanteans, they can't. They have to wear basically like water tanks on their head to basically be able to breathe. And if that thing gets busted, they basically suffocate and die. So why can Aquaman and Mira and Volko and King Orn, why are they able to do it? None of that ever gets explained. Why they have certain powers over other people, why they're able to breathe on land and others aren't explained. There's just a lot left open-ended that a lot of people who aren't fans of the comics, like if you're a comic book fan of Aquaman, then you know why they're able to do that and how they're able to do that. But 50% to maybe even more of the fans that are going to see this movie are going to see it because of Jason Momoa and Justice League, and they don't know enough about the Aquaman character or characters in the Aquaman universe to know why these things are happening. They just kind of have to accept it when they watch the movie, because this movie doesn't really delve into any information to give them any of that stuff. The movie also moves very much like a video game in a sense, where there are just chapters. And just like in a video game, when you enter a new area, James Wan puts up dialogue, like somewhere in the Indian Ocean, somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. And then they enter an area, and the name of the area pops up on screen, like a video game. And, I mean, there's a MacGuffin in the movie. And for people who don't know the term MacGuffin, it's when there's a certain item or person that everyone in the film is striving to get. Like in Justice League, it was the mother boxes. I mean, it's just this one. They're Arthur and Mira are trying to find this golden spear that the one true king of Atlantis can wield, kind of like Arthur's Excalibur sword in a sense. So they're on this mission to try to get that, as with, like I said, another plot story that is in this film. And it just, everything feels like a separate chapter to a video game, and then they beat that chapter, and then they go into another chapter, conquer that chapter, go into another chapter, and then another chapter, and another chapter, until we get to the final battle at the end of the game. Which to some people might like that. To other people, it can ruin the flow of the film, and it comes very jarring in a sense. And it can be very disoriented to a lot of people who are trying to watch the movie and let it just flow, because it just jerks into different areas and to different plot points throughout the entire film. Like I said, that's another reason why this movie could have been broken up into two films. I feel like it would have flowed much better that way, and it probably would have been less jarring and a more fluid film overall. Like I said earlier, the final battle was really cool, but it's a mess, and you can't fully see all that's going on. And for someone who... There's literally one point where Aquaman isn't a part of this battle. He's trying to stop the battle, but yet he just lets a lot of people die. He really is supposed to be stopping these people from dying. And there's certain things that he does in that battle, and you'll know it when you see it, where I'm just like, dude, you have a mission. Stop doing that. Because as you're doing this, thousands upon thousands of people are dying. And you're supposed to be stopping this from happening. You're not doing that. Get your ass to work. Also, because they do some past like previous scenes, they do use de-aging technology on Thumera Morrison, Nicole Kidman, and William Dafoe. William Dafoe and Nicole Kidman look perfectly fine, but Thumera Morrison definitely has an uncanny valley feel, which basically means that you're looking at the person and you just know that they don't look right. A good example of that would be if anyone watched Star Wars Rogue One with Grand Moff Tarkin. I mean, clearly that actor had passed a long time ago, so that entire film was done with somebody basically wearing the CGI face of Grand Moff Tarkin. And you could tell that was not him. It's just like your eyes were just like, something's not right about what I'm looking at. And it's for the beginning of the movie with Tom Curry playing basically the younger version of Thumera Morrison, you could just tell his face just didn't look right. It looked off. That or the guy just took a ton of Botox before the shooting. But, the de-aging just did not work for that particular character. With Nicole Kidman and William Dafoe, it worked perfectly. So I have no idea why I don't know if they just couldn't get it to work with his face or what, but he just looked weird the entire time until they finally showed him in present day, obviously older. But yeah, that was very, very weird to watch for the first half of for the first like 15 minutes of the movie. Overall, yes, there's a lot of things wrong with Aquaman, and I just pointed all those out, and there's probably even more that I didn't get into, mainly because it would spoil parts of the movie. But, big but, despite all of the things that don't work with this film, I still enjoyed the hell out of this movie. While I was noticing things in the movie that were not working properly, I was having a blast watching it. I enjoyed watching it, and I had a fun time. And it's something that I will watch many times hereafter. I personally enjoyed it more than Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is a better movie, but if I had to choose which one to watch, I would probably watch this one over Wonder Woman. So take that as you will, on whether or not you will like this movie or not. There are a lot of things wrong with the movie, but you will have a fun time watching it, and sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you just need to go into a movie and just have fun watching it. And you're definitely going to get that with Aquaman. And we already know we're going to get sequels to this. And so hopefully they can kind of see what didn't work in this movie, and flip it around and try to make it better for the sequel. And that's basically it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the review of Aquaman. If you guys did, don't forget to hit that like button. And feel free to share this video with other people who have seen Aquaman, or who are looking to see whether or not Aquaman is for them. Don't forget to share the video so they can see that. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the channel and over on Sean's Movie Crusades on Facebook, so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that we are posting. Like I said, I got some stuff coming down here in the next week. I got the top movies of the year, most disappointing movies of the year, most surprising movies of the year. Next week, I will be releasing the most anticipated films for 2019, and then I'll also be doing some other movie reviews if I can find the time to actually sit down and watch some movies. So a lot more stuff to come down here in the next week, so hit that subscribe button so you guys stay up to date with all the latest stuff that pops up on the channel. And until then, I hope you guys all had a happy holidays, and I hope you guys went and saw some movies and you guys had a fun time. And until next time, Movie Crusaders, until I see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.